Hi, welcome to my show. Today I have Laura Bernstein-Machlay as my guest, and she is a Detroit Working Writers member. Hello, Laura.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me. Um, well, Laura just. Oh, by the way, when did your book just come out?
It came out May 1st, so
Oh, really? It's
it's
very
a brand new baby.
Okay,
It's
great.
a newborn.
I know it was new, but I forgot exactly what it was, and I have the cover right here. Actually, I love the
Yeah.
cover.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
not even a toddler yet.
Yeah. So, I love the stories that you have in there. But first, before we talk about that, I want to say that you are going to be having a workshop at Detroit Working Writers, November 10th
I'm
at
really excited.
MSU Management Education Center in Troy. Yeah, I'm excited too because I was the one that read your proposal, and I'll be honest with you. In the beginning, I didn't know what the Tinker Toy essay was. I had
made
to
that
look
up.
it up. Did you?
I made it up calling it a Tinker Toy essay.
Well, and then I asked the president of DWW.
That's why I
said,
put modular essay
Roberta.
there in parentheses.
Yes, I said, Roberta, what is this? And then we started discussing it. And so, thank you. We ended up learning something. But so today you're going to be able to kind of explain that a little bit more to us. And as I understand it, so your book, the essays are in your book are kind of based on that kind of essay. Somewhat?
No, I would say probably 3/4 of them are more traditional linear.
Oh,
but
okay.
there are a couple of these modular essays in
cool.
the book. I've been doing a lot of that writing since I wrote the book.
Uh-huh.
And there are a few in the book that started out that way. And
Great. Will you be able
Yeah.
to read a little bit for us, a little bit, and to? Okay, great.
Yeah, from the
Great.
final
so we
essay
can
in the
have,
book.
Okay, sounds good.
Absolutely.
That sounds good. Yeah. So you teach literature and creative writing at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit,
Yes.
and that's where you live. So tell us a little bit about that, about your teaching experience.
Well, I've been there a really long time, and I've taught a number of courses, but right now and for a while I've been doing literature. I'm doing a world literature class. I've taught women's literature. I like non-traditional lits mostly. I also teach creative writing. I've done poetry workshops. Currently, I am doing creative nonfiction, and currently I am almost exclusively online. Which
you
has been,
teach? Okay.
yeah, it's been a really interesting experience. I didn't expect to go there.
Okay. So is it because more students are mostly interested in online courses?
You know, it kind of happened as a fluke. Our old chair, Julie Longo, said, I want to get an online class in our liberal arts department. And I think you could do it. And I said, well, okay, I guess I think maybe I could do it too. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I ended up creating a course. I ended up creating what was a memoir class. And then I ended up shifting it over to creative nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty successful, and so she said, let's do another one, and I did another one, and so I was the online department at College for Creative Studies for several years. I was kind of it.
Wow, that's wonderful, though.
And now I that's mostly what I do, and I like it. I like the way that there's a certain sense of almost anonymity that, especially when we're doing a creative writing workshop, students are willing to express more openly about themselves and more personal issues, I think.
Oh, you saw that. Okay.
Which is surprising. You wouldn't think that would be true, but that's kind of been my experience. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So you've been nominated for 6. How do you say that?
Pushcart prizes.
Yes,
Yeah,
in
and
both
I
the
haven't won
nonfiction
yet.
and poetry category. But
I keep
nominated
trying.
6.
I know. I keep hoping.
So you write a great deal. Obviously, you've been published quite a bit.
I've been published
Yeah.
a lot, but this is my first full-length book.
Yes.
So it took me a long time. I've been kind of tentative. Once I figured out something that worked, which was publishing in individual magazines, I stuck with it. But
So how
writing a
long
whole
has
book-
it taken you to write that book when you say that? So is it based on published material that you had published in the past, and then you just kind of a collection of these essays that you had written over the years?
About
for the
half
most
and
part?
half. The
Mhm.
book itself, I would say probably 3/4 of the essays were published
Mhm.
ahead of time in different journals.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured out about halfway in that, what I've got here is kind of looking like a book. I'm starting to see an arc and a direction that I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And it was tough to see because I actually wrote what became the final essay in Here Holy. I actually wrote that first. So it took a while to realize that it was turning into a book, but then after that, I started consciously creating essays to go in a direction that I thought it was already going. And it took about 5 years overall.
Oh, okay, that's not too long for a
Right.
first book, yes.
Right.
And so when we received, first tell me about the idea when you were submitting the proposal, the workshop that you're going to be leading for Detroit Working Writers. Can you go a little bit more into that and explain, what is the Tinker Toy essay?
Oh, okay.
I mean, this name is fun.
I thought I was being so clever. Well, there's a category of fiction called Modular Stories, and this is just an essay that does something pretty much exactly the same, which is building an essay or a piece of fiction, whatever piece of writing you're doing, building in pieces or sections or separate little narratives or little scenelets or vignettes, however you want to call it. And rather than having one linear piece that works chronologically, for example, you've got these separate pieces, and they can go anywhere from being a line long to several paragraphs long, or probably even longer. And you can build them and stack them in whatever order you want. So the organization is thematic. You're basing the organization on a central idea or theme or metaphor or idea that will show up usually in the title, although you don't have to do that, but it's easiest that way. That's kind of the easy way out, I suppose. And you build different vignettes or stories, and depending on the order that you put those in, how you juxtapose them together, you're going to get a different build-up, whether you're continually building and building and building in intensity, or whether you'll have an intense piece juxtaposed next to something that's more funny, and you go back and forth. That's kind of up to you as the writer. Yeah. I forgot what you asked in the first place.
No, well, yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to understand it a little bit better, because that's going to be the workshop that you're going to be leading. Yes.
Right. So for instance.
So for what would the writer, go ahead, give me an example, and then what would the writer benefit from that kind of a style of writing?
Okay, well, a couple things. I actually brought along a journal I can pull up, but in it there are a couple of.
Go ahead and do that.
I happened to grab it. Honestly, I grabbed it off my shelf. Just thought, I wonder if I can find a couple good examples in here. And I quite literally found 2 unbelievably good examples.
Okay.
And one is by Andrea Eberly, and it's called 10 Cigarettes. And it counts down. And it counts down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And those are the little subheadings in here. And each one is a little story around this person's last 10 cigarettes over different periods of time before they quit. And then earlier on, there's, and by the way, this journal is Jelly Bucket, which is a wonderful journal out of a writing program in Kentucky. In any case, this one is called 50 States, and it's written by Denise Duhamel and Julie Wade. I'm actually not sure if I'm saying Denise's name right. Duhamel, perhaps? In any case, it's a series of 50 different vignettes, each about a different state and labeled state by state by state. So there's Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, and so on. And they're different stories about the state. But they don't have to be this obvious. They can have different subtitles. You can not have subtitles at all. There can be spaces between them. The idea is that they're separate, seemingly disconnected pieces that are often complete in and of themselves, that can be written and stacked against each other. And depending on the order you stack them in, you get different emotional output from them.
Wow, this is very interesting. I mean, I've been writing for a very long time, but you always learn something new. I've been writing for over 20 years, and then, Roberta too. When we were discussing this, it was fascinating for us to even learn about this. So
I just think they're fun.
Yes,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
I just think you asked me what the writer gets out of it, and I think they're. Number one, they're easier to get into for the writer because you're not taking on a long, complicated linear narrative. You're taking on separate pieces and putting these different pieces together in a way, but you're starting with the disparate pieces. And so it's not so daunting to say, okay, I'm going to write a few paragraphs about something, and then stop, and then something else that connects to it. I wrote a piece called Loser that was about things I've lost in my life. All the different situations where I've lost things that mattered to me. And so I'd write a few paragraphs about something I lost, and then I'd write another paragraph about something else I lost, and then I stacked them together.
Is that in your book?
No, that's not in the book.
That's not in the book.
That's
okay,
not in the
yeah,
book,
that
no.
would sound like something, yeah. So, the one that is in the book, would you be able? Let me bring up the. This is for travelers.
Yeah.
Can you read it to us so we can have a better
Sure.
example?
I can read you a few. I can read you 2 or 3 of the vignettes in here.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, this piece is called Holy, and it's the final piece in the book. And I'm not going to read the ones that are next to each other. I think I'm going to jump around a little bit so I
Okay.
can get more in. But so so this is Holy. The first section is called Jesus Freaks. Every few weeks I hide from my neighbors, the Jesus freaks, would-be denizens of the unfinished super church slowly rising at the end of my street. The size of an airport terminal, a football field, a family farm, its bones, its blonde walls and cross soaring 80 feet into the sky, claim the once abandoned Detroit fields in the name of the Lord. Holy, holy. And my neighbors who contribute dollar by dollar to the monolith, building it prayer by prayer. They come like motifs in a recurring dream, knocking at my door to implore God on behalf of my freewheeling soul, to drop off pamphlets and sing hallelujahs for me with their whole hearts. I say I'm Jewish, and on the spot become a challenge. Now we play this game. I pull the curtains and ignore them. They know I'm home, know I'm going to hell, but leave the pamphlets anyway. And when Stephen, Celia, and I are coming or going, or when we see them strolling the neighborhood, all of us wave at them and lie that, hey, we'll be back to chat right after this errand. The dad always in his Sunday suit, the mom, some other ladies with their cheap corsages as though they'll be attending prom later, 2 pretty girls wearing Value World finery, all of them cradling Bibles affectionately, like small dogs in the crooks of their arms. They always wave back, diamonds glinting in their eyes, smiling like certainty. Mountains. For a long time I reserved my faith for found treasures, for colorful feathers, for bracelets abandoned on the beach, pears right off the tree, seashells I can clutch in my hand, reminding me where I've been. This trick is useful in my 20s when I mostly believe in getting the hell out of town as life gets tangled. At 27, I leave for my second bout of grad school because I can't think of anything else to do, because I've run out of friends in interesting places with couches to sleep on. I drive Detroit to Seattle, trusting the rusted brown citation I got for $400 and a story which might have been true at the time. I pray myself over 2 chains of mountains, past road signs warning of sudden rock falls, through cascades at night, blind climb into black, winding descent into black, the citation spluttering and overheating, slow as a tractor going up, brakes squealing on the downside, me clutching the wheel, rubbing its frayed vinyl with the pads of my thumbs as I follow the taillights of a friendly truck with Michigan plates, which tears out of somewhere in my rear view mirror, out of the darkness, and pulls in front of me, slowing, lighting the way to the next exit, next splash of shops and Starlight Motel, where I turn off, breathing hard like I've run a foot race, where I steal from their lobby an ashtray printed white on black with the outline of an anonymous mountain, a souvenir I keep for years on any shelf, in any room, portable as faith. Tourist stories. Zadie's tourist stories always start like this. Your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Moses, or your great-great-great-great-grandfather Abraham. A closet feminist, Zadie also gives me great-great-great, etc., grandmother Esther. He must have liked her a lot. Along with her story, he gifts me her name, a secret Jewish name that never serves any obvious purpose and is absent from my birth certificate. Esther is also his older sister, but I don't think I'm named for her. Zadie barely mentions either of her sisters, though both live nearby. And that goes on for a little way. And then I'll just read one more. Stoned. What one of my students writes in her journal for Composition 101, quote, "The Jews, also known as the unbelievers, because they don't believe in anything they can't see, put Jesus on the cross and stoned him to death." What I write in her margins, "Were you stoned when you wrote this?" And so, as you can see, it's a series organized around the idea of me searching for faith in my own very, very unconventional way and finding it in ways that I think most people probably wouldn't think of, and trying to search for meaning in my life that way. But the theme at the center of it is faith or religion, and I've basically gathered every connection I've had with religion that I could come up with at the time that I wrote this and built little stories around them. And then I've taken those separate stories and put them together in a way that I hope ultimately leads to a conclusion, not only for the essay itself, but for the kind of questions that have been raised in the book as a whole.
Very fascinating.
That was the goal,
I liked
anyway.
it. Well, I enjoyed listening to that. Thank you for reading it.
Sure.
And it also mentions that regarding your book, so you also address, being your definition of being wife, mother, and your home, so and how do you address that, I guess, in your writing, or what have you discovered?
Well, I think what I realized in writing these was just how ungrounded I've been most of my life, free-floating in a way that I was utterly terrified by, but yet kept flinging myself into over and over again. So over the years of my life, especially through my 20s, I lived in, I lived in Birmingham, Michigan, which is a suburb I grew up in. But from there, I lived in Ann Arbor, where I went to school, and then I lived in London for a little while, and then I ended up moving to Chicago. Oh, actually, no, I went to Philadelphia before that. Then I went to Chicago. Then at the end of that decade, I ended up in Seattle to do my MFA in writing. And then in each of these places, I moved and moved and moved. And I went to Europe a few times during that period, too, with pretty much no money and really, really, really dumb, stupid luck. And the universe was looking out for me. Something was, because
Wow.
I really was stupid. So I say to the universe, please don't let my daughter do what I did. And and I realized as I was writing these essays from a place of being settled in a long-term good marriage, where I feel like I finally kind of found home, that all these pieces were by searching through my family history and my traveling history and my searching for whatever it was I was searching for history. I was really kind of seeking a place to be home. And
So-
safe and comfortable, yeah.
So it seems like, would you say that your marriage and your writing kind of helped ground you?
Yes.
In a way? Yeah.
My marriage, my daughter,
Your daughter.
and my writing,
yes,
and so-
motherhood does do that, yeah.
and my grandparents, who are kind of the basis of this, so my bubby and Zadie, so they kind of moved throughout it. Different friends moved throughout it. My husband is through it. Stephen, who says I have to use his real name. So
That's good.
yes, so he is Stephen in this,
Right.
and my daughter is in it, and they kind of weave in and out as the other stories about my life pop up, and those are my constants.
Well, since you are a teacher of creative writing and you teach literature, what kind of advice would you give emerging writers who are trying to break in? Maybe not. Well, actually, even trying to find the time and the discipline to write, as well as those who are trying to break in and maybe might feel a little bit frustrated by.
Break in which way? Do you mean break into publishing, or
Yes.
just getting themselves to write?
Breaking into the business, the publishing aspect of it, yes.
Yeah, I started out as a poet. That's what my MFA is in, is poetry, and I was a poet for many years. And there's no way to make a living as a poet. I suppose it's hard to make a living as any kind of a writer, but in terms of the publishing, I think in some ways it's easier for poets, for individual poems anyway,
Yes,
because there are
that's true.
so many journals out there, and poems by their nature tend to be shorter, which means journals can publish more of them. So that was where I started publishing, and I can tell you my method, which I've told to many friends who are feeling frustrated, which is, once I have a piece, an essay or a poem or whatever, and I decide that it's ready to go out, I'll find, I feel like I shouldn't even say this out loud.
Too late.
I actually have it out at about 10 places at once. I make sure that it's at places that actually accept simultaneous submissions, because otherwise you're cheating, and you don't want that bad karma in the world.
Yeah, because there are places that specifically say
don't,
but there are some that say, and actually
and
I
most
have
do. Most accept simultaneous
especially
submissions
nowadays.
these days.
There's so many publications, and it's not fair
Yes.
for the author sometimes, where you have to
Right.
sit there and wait. But I have heard of people who have successfully used that, where they send something to 10 different places,
Yep.
and that this is how they get it published. They feel like this is the number that always seems to work.
That's my number,
That's
and I keep it consistent. If something comes back with a rejection letter, I go, rejection. And then I take it and I send it back out again. So I'm keeping myself at a consistent 10. I feel like I need to have that kind of spread in order to see that my piece is getting seen. Because, there's lots of reasons why editors don't want a piece. It might not fit with what their magazine is. It might not fit with the way that it's organized that time around.
Right.
They might have had something for lunch that hurt their stomach. It could be anything.
It could be anything.
There's lots of reasons.
And so in your case, what you're saying is you don't take it personally.
I do, but then I get over it real quickly because I've been doing it for a long time.
Okay, so you don't allow taking it personally to stop you from moving forward. It's like, okay, this is part of business. And
this is part of the business.
Yes,
and
you move on and you resubmit.
I have my little grrr moment, and then I get past it. Yep,
okay.
I have to.
And what about your discipline with regards to writing? Do you have certain times that you write, or is it kind of whenever you have time?
Oh, that's such a good question. I tend to work in fits and starts, I guess. I've tried writing every day, and I know it's the best discipline, and I know it ends up working, but left alone, I don't naturally go that way.
Mm-hmm.
Left alone, I get big bursts of creativity, and I'll write lots of things in a very short period. I'm pretty quick once I get an idea. I have a difficult time getting started, but once I get started, I can't stop writing. So I'll pound out an essay in 2 days. And then I'll work it and work it and work it and hack at it and rewrite it for weeks.
Oh,
picking it apart and reworking it.
That's an important thing. I want to point something out with regards. A lot of people don't understand that, or there's a lot of work that goes on into what seems like a short piece of essay. So you were saying, okay, an essay, you might write it in a couple of days, but then here you are revising it, editing, doing whatever necessary for weeks.
I call it massaging the prose. First you're taking and moving big chunks of it, but after a while you're just petting it a little bit to see if a little word can be changed or order of a sentence can be changed.
And that's important. These specifics are very important, and this is how pieces get published. It's what we do after we have written it initially. It's the revising, and even possibly very established writers, they have somebody else read their material and give them the feedback.
I have really good readers.
Yes,
so
and I have a great
it.
editor that I work with, and I really, sometimes she'll just say something once and I can pick out what she means because I've worked with her. I can tell when she's politely telling me this is not so great. You need to rework that. Yeah. And that's wonderful because you care. That's the whole point, is to care about the quality of the writing. But then
that's the fun. To me, that's the fun.
Yes.
The getting it out in the first place is hard.
Yes.
But then playing with the language is the fun part.
It's fun.
That's
me. Right.
That's my process.
Yeah, and that's a good lesson for people to understand, that it just takes time, to care and nurture whatever you have written, and then to just send your best quality work, although not to get stuck being so afraid.
Right.
I had somebody that I was coaching who was once told me that, she loves writing and she has all this material, but she's so afraid she could not submit it.
Yeah.
It's that fear of the rejection, or fear that it's not good enough. And so in her case, it wasn't about that, you should polish this up. It was like, no, you need to submit this ASAP. Yeah. And it's the fear of, that rejection, which you kind of get used to it. Right.
Because we all get rejected.
We all get rejected. And then that kind of becomes, the rejection part is not only part of the business, but it really teaches you quite a bit along the way.
And sometimes, a couple of times, I've ended up in a conversation with the editor after Michigan Quarterly Review. I must have sent to them 7 times before I finally got a note from the editor, Lawrence Goldstein, the old editor, who was a wonderful man. And he finally wrote back and said, I'm really sorry. Yeah, you keep trying, but these pieces just aren't for us. And I was going to give up at that point, and then I don't know what happened. Maybe I went out with my friends for a drink or something, and I came home. I don't remember. But I ended up writing him back, and I figured I got a little in, even if it was an in just to reject me kindly because I was looking so pathetic. And I told him the truth, which was I love that journal. It's one of the best, if not the best, edited journals in the state and the country. It's a beautiful journal. I read it. I own it. And I said, so with his permission, I was going to keep trying. And then I sent him another batch a little later, and he rejected them, but he wrote back and he said, wow, based on what you wrote last time, I really wanted to take these, but they're not right for us. And then I sent again, and that time was the charm, and they took a couple poems. So
that is an amazing story. That really sums up everything we've just been trying to get for that. I love your perseverance. I mean, I love your attitude that here's somebody telling you.
He gave me an
He's trying to politely tell you, don't do this again.
Yes.
You didn't give up. You were like, well.
I didn't. And sometimes that hasn't worked, too. I don't make a habit of doing that. In that case, for whatever reason, like I said, maybe a little after dinner drink was involved or something. I don't know. It could have been that.
It could have been just confidence too, which is a nice thing to have. Maybe.
Maybe that one turned out really well.
Owning, you're a writer and then you understand the dynamics of it. I love that story. I think that would give anybody listening to this so much hope. Based on all the information that you shared with me today, I think I really encourage people to come to the Detroit Working Writers. A lot of people don't even know that Detroit Working Writers is a 118-year-old organization that was started by 13 women. So it used to be a women's organization, and then in the early 2000s they started accepting men. And
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, most people I know.
Didn't.
I mean,
and it's only really recently too. I really should have known that.
Well, you know what? I was a member for a while. I actually learned more about it because as when I was elected vice president, then I started looking more into it. And when I found this out, I'm like, oh my gosh, more people should know about this. And I ended up writing an article for the for the Michigan Historical Society. So as I was digging deep into this, I thought, wow, this is amazing material that really there's not too much out there, but there is some material on that.
I lived back in Detroit for 20 years before I'd even heard of you.
But
it's been a great experience. I have met so many amazingly talented writers. It's really been awesome. I wish I'd joined way earlier.
Before. Well, we're very lucky to have you now.
Aww.
And again, for people, emerging writers or established writers, this is a great opportunity to connect to this community, learn something, or connect to other authors. So I really look forward to your workshop
on
November 10th.
I can't wait to do it. I'm really excited.
Yes. And I thank you for coming on the show. And we look forward to having you again.
Thank you so much, William. Thanks for having me.